Good morning, guys. This is the Recovery Channel podcast. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, along with Jennifer Lovely today. I'm coming live from San Antonio today, and it's overcast and it may rain. What about you, Jen?
Oh, it's sunshiny and beautiful here.
I hate it when it's like that. I absolutely hate it. Yeah, you've got a bit of a lag going on, but that's okay. Just bear with us.
I do. All right. I'll just deal with it.
New internet is needed, I think, guys. New internet. We're gonna get a fund together for. It's gonna call Jennifer Lovely's Internet Connection. I want you to subscribe to it. 10 cents each, and when all 5 million viewers spend 10 cents, we should have enough to retire and vacate, Jen.
That's hilarious. Totally.
So, guys, thank you for joining the show as usual. The Recovery Channel podcast to you Monday and Friday usually. We stuck a Wednesday in, and I'll tell you why we stuck a Wednesday in. We stuck a Wednesday because we have a great guest on today. She's a lady after my own heart. She's loud and she's proud and she's out there, and she's raising the topic of alcoholism, addiction, and recovery with other things. She's a director of the Georgia Council of Substance Abuse. So anybody in that position I love because they have the power and the voice to use it in the right direction. And that's what we need. We need more of that, guys, more of it as we try and bring alcoholism and addiction out into the community. And one of the reasons that I started this deal, a couple of reasons. I wanted to get other people well, of course. That's why I studied neuroscience and brain science and got into the actual working of the mind for the last 27 years. But I wanted to bring it out. I wanted to that guy that stands up and goes, hey, I'm an alcoholic or I'm a recovered alcoholic and life is amazing. I've been on a pink cloud for over 30 years. I'm not going to stop now. And this is the way to do it. And I recover out loud so other people, if they wish, can recover in peace and quiet. I'm not anonymous in this deal, but I so much value your anonymity without a doubt. So Neil Campbell will be on after this short break, guys. Hey, welcome back to the show, guys. I can see the figures going up as we start. My name is Dr. Rob Kelly, the Addiction Doctor, along with Jennifer Lovely. This is the Recovery Channel podcast, and our special guest today is Neil Campbell. Good morning, Neil.
Good morning, Dr. Rob. Good morning, Jennifer. It's good to meet you and see you and to finally be on. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you for being on. It's absolutely amazing. Guys, for those who are listening and watching, we have Jen on a bit of a lag this morning, so bear with us. I think she hears the questions about 3 or 4 seconds after us, so I have to bear with us. But I have to ask you, first of all, let's get straight into it, Neil. Let's talk about your addiction, your alcoholism in the early days and what brought you into the recovery business.
Ooh, wow. How long do you have, Dr. Rob? So I am someone living in recovery. I've got this past summer, I hit my 30-year mark, and I also turned 60. So I have been sober half my life.
60?
Yes.
Shut up.
It's recovery, man. Recovery is good for your skin. It's good for wrinkles. It's good for energy. Yeah, it's all about recovery. So, So 30 years ago, I was a sick young woman, a sick 29, 30-year-old woman who was, I had a doctor tell me that if I didn't stop drinking, that I would not have a functioning liver within 5 years. So that got my attention. Took me a little while longer to finally, my whole life did fall apart. I was one of those who had a pretty rough go of it. I was homeless. I was, I still had my job. I somehow showed up for my job, but I didn't have a whole lot going on. I lost all my friends. I lost my family and just didn't want to live like this anymore. And a friend of mine told me that there's a better way and took me to a 12-step meeting. So I'm a 12-stepper and I haven't had a drink since. And my life, like you, Dr. Rob, I am on a cloud. My life is so good today. It has been a miracle. I have a law enforcement background, so I don't know if that makes me a friend of the show or not, but I started my career as a deputy in Key West, Florida. But I have a long and storied history in law enforcement and corrections. But I eventually came to this business mainly because of that intersection between criminal justice and addiction, and trying to figure out ways that we can help people get out of the criminal justice system and stop criminalizing addiction. And I became the state director of substance abuse in Georgia 15 years ago. Decided I couldn't work from within any longer, so became an advocate and was hired by the Georgia Council on Substance Abuse as the only employee 12 years ago. And today we have, I'm trying to think, 33 full-time employees. And we are, business is booming, and we are in the recovery business. We hire people in recovery. We do training for people in recovery. And so that's kind of how I got here. And I everything I do is on the backs of those people like us, like you, Dr. Rob, people in recovery. Everything we do is to promote that recovery voice.
Talk to me about what has us creating addicts and alcoholics as criminals.
Well, I think it's because there's so much we don't know. We don't treat addiction or substance use disorders like, we always say it's preventable, it's treatable, and it's chronic, and it's a health condition. And we treat it like a moral issue, like there's something wrong with those people over there. I grew up in a white middle-class home, and it just was not talked about. My family did not talk about addiction. They still don't talk about it a lot. They don't recognize that I am a person in recovery. They'd rather just not talk about that. So I think that's a huge part of it. And then I think we don't, because it manifests itself in our behavior, that our behavior gets out of control, and then we got to arrest that person, or that person needs to be locked up. And so we don't, it's sort of circular, Jen. I mean, I think it's a great question. And I think we could spend 8 hours talking about it. It's like what causes the criminality is how we define it, right? It's like, it's not, if we looked at people and said, man, that person living under the bridge is ill, as opposed to that person doesn't want to get better, I think it would be a whole different conversation.
I think that as well. I've done a lot of work with the Dallas and San Antonio police regarding information and raising profile. I also do a yearly thing at the drug court in Dallas where people graduate. And I often go in my scrubs there because I want people to know that doesn't matter what part of life you come from, addiction and alcoholism will get you, it will kill you. My story goes back to homelessness, just like you, Neil. I love people that have been homeless because that's the gritty reality of the disease. I mean, you look at us today, and from the outside, probably butter wouldn't melt. But when I tell my story, and I've seen grown men cry when I tell my story, it's horrendous. But the underlying message there is, look at us now. Look what we can do. I think many people see the disease, like you said before, as something like I don't say disformed, but it's definitely outside the box that you can't get well from, and that's just your lot. Oops. And he's always going to be an alcoholic, and he's never going to recover. My first wife still says, don't trust your dad, he's going to be an alcoholic. But after 25 years of my daughter being estranged, she got in contact 2 years ago, and we have a good relationship. And that's another stamp on, hey, look what we can do whilst in recovery. What was your worst time now when you were drinking?
Oh, goodness. I think that's a great question. I haven't thought about it in so long because things have gotten so great. So what really, I guess when it got so bad that I was driving down, I was living in Tallahassee, Florida. I remember driving down the street. I had been beat up by my significant other the night before, and I had marks on my back, bruises on my back and on my face, and driving down the road, and I was couch surfing at the time with different friends and different people. And I had to pull over to the side of the road to say, I don't know where am I going? I don't know what house I'm sleeping at tonight. I didn't know. It was like, I just had nowhere to go. And I felt so lost and so alone. And I remember looking up and thinking, God, I don't want to live like this anymore. And it was within a couple of days that someone grabbed me by the hand and took me to a meeting. And I was just lost. I was lost. You talk about spiritually, morally, financially bankrupt. I mean, I had nothing. And, luckily what I did have, the recovery capital that I had was a job. I still had a job. So I had a little bit of, I had food at the time, But I also had a network of people, an entree, like when you walk into your first 12-step meeting and there's people who are going to love me until I love myself. That's pretty incredible. And I didn't know they were there. I'm like, where have you people been? I didn't know anybody who didn't drink. Did you, Dr. Ross? I didn't know anybody. I didn't hang out with people who didn't use drugs or drink. That just wasn't my reference group. So, discovering this group of people who just wanted to love on me was amazing. And I've never forgotten any of them. And they were angels, guardian angels. I remember coming and saying, hey, you need a place to stay as long as you want. It's like, well, I never knew anybody like that. So I really developed some friendships and connections back then that I never knew I could have.
I love that so much. Talk to me about what it is for people that are scared to jump into recovery and how you support them. I have 2 kids that are recovering heroin addicts and were homeless, which is how I got into recovery myself. So I would love to know how you support people out there in your community right now that are afraid to go get help, that are afraid to ask the police or anybody for support.
Yeah, I think, well, it's a great question. If I'm talking to someone who's newly in recovery or is maybe having a decision-making process, or saying, I don't know, I just ask a series of questions. We believe in the power of asking questions. So things like, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being not ready at all, 10 being totally ready, how ready are you to make some changes in your life? And I've actually sat in jail with people, knee to knee, going in and visiting in jails and having people go, yeah, maybe I'm a 4, a 3 or a 4. I'm really not ready to change. And you look around and you go, really? This is what you want? And you're like, this is it? And they're like, yeah, 3 or 4, I'm not done. I got a couple of other runs. What would it take to get you to that 10? What are some of the things? I think that internal motivation, I think everybody has strengths, and it's just trying to build on those strengths and finding everyone's strengths. And there's just no one answer. What was right for me is not necessarily right for you or anybody else. Even the way we work 12 steps, right, Dr. Rob? It's like the way I worked my program is so different than anybody else. So I think the key is to find what works for that person. I've had so many young people, especially, say they're hopeless, and I say, well, let me hold that hope until you can hold it yourself, and I got it for you. So I think being that voice of hope, being someone who's supportive. I'm not a tough lover. I am I believe in compassionate conversations and helping people find that seed of magic that's in everybody that everybody can have. So I don't know if that answers your question because it's so hard, but I think finding out how confident they are, they can change and what they need. Sometimes it's just, I think the thing that helped me, the one question somebody asked me was, are you okay? And I was able to say, I am not. I trusted that person. And I was able to say, hell no, I'm not okay. I am really screwed up. And I think having that, being able to just ask those questions in a compassionate way. Are you okay? How can I support you? What's worked in the past? Have you made some changes? What do you want out of your life? What do you care about? I love to ask young people, what are you passionate about? Well, I'm passionate about music. Well, how you're living your life today getting you to that passion? How do we get to what they're passionate about? Because that's where addiction is so tricky. It works on that part of our brain that kills our passion, right? That stifles our passion.
Yeah.
It's those neurotransmitters that are just not firing, and life looks really bleak. So it's just pulling out little bits. And the other thing, Jennifer, that we ask all the time as coaches, because we train recovery coaches in Georgia, is we ask the question, hey, what's going well today? What's right with you today? Right? Instead of that, you just turn it around. It's not what's wrong, what's going on. It's more what's right with you today. Tell me something that's working well in your life. And usually they can think of something.
And I think that's important that I know that when I'm working with patients or sponsees, it's not about the alcohol. The alcohol's a symptom. It's like spots to my chicken pox. Let's talk about really going in. Let's talk about the change. Let's talk about neural pathway change. I have self-sabotaging neural pathways. If I don't maintain my head, because the hypothalamus, once it releases, I'm done releasing to my head, that I'm going to self-sabotage over any period of time. And it's that daily reprieve. I looked at reprieve once. It was a stay of execution. And that's how serious it has to be like a life deal. I mean, I'm laying homeless in the gutter, Neil, still looking down on people. That's where alcoholism got me. Yeah, I had no confidence. I had no self-esteem.
Yeah.
You know, just when I finally walked into my 12-step meeting, I didn't want my wife back. I didn't want my kids back. I just wanted the compulsion to drink to go away, guys. That's all I wanted. And this is not about stopping drinking and taking drugs. This is about getting some sort of life that excites you. When you want to get up in the morning and go, how many people can I help today? I get all my guys to compliment 3 people every single day, and it'll keep you humble and get out there and do what you want to do. Guys, Neil Campbell's on the show. Word from our sponsor. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. If you're just watching, great. If you're listening on podcast, that was Life Over Addiction. Lance Wright is a transformational life coach. He's also one of our sponsors. Let us help you navigate your life's path back to one of purpose and meaning. He says the chains of shame and guilt are no longer hold you back. Let's start a new conversation. Lance says 310-890-2337. Visit his website, lifeoveraddiction.com. Or send him an email, info@lifeoveraddiction.com. That's Lance Wright. He's such a great guy. Okay, there's loads of stuff in your life, I'd imagine, that's been highlights. There's loads of good stuff. Otherwise, if it wasn't like me, you'd probably be drunk. Yeah. About living. Give me one of your highlights. Give me one of the times that when you sat on your own and you think back in your past of helping people, what's the one you go, oh, wow, yeah, I remember that.
Wow, there's so much. We started a recovery meeting in downtown Atlanta about 10 years ago that was out of a church initially. And I had these folks, they were operating this church, and I said, hey, I want to volunteer. It was when I hit my 20-year. Yeah, it was 10 years ago, because I hit my 20-year mark. And I thought, man, I need to get back to basics. I need to get back to where it started happening for me. So we started doing a recovery. So I met these folks who had this little storefront church in downtown Atlanta, and they're like, well, don't come. I said, I want to volunteer. I want to volunteer and help. And they said, well, we don't want you if you just want to make sandwiches. We want you if you really want to make a difference. And I said, well, I'd love to do a 12-step meeting. So my assistant at the time and I started going once a week on Friday afternoons. And I learned so much from all of those folks. I mean, I remember sitting in the room going, man, this is the real deal. This is where people are struggling. And I had a guy, his name's Eddie, and I hope he listens to this, and I will tell him to listen, because Eddie, I met him, and I was like, it was we were having a meeting after the meeting, we're standing outside, because that went from, we had 16 people at our first meeting, and now that's still going 10 years later, and they have, 40, 50 people. I don't have anything to do with it anymore. We moved, but it's still going on. But I met Eddie, and Eddie said to me about, hey man, it's cold outside. Let me take you to the shelter. And he's like, girl, the shelter's where I get my crack. That's where I'm staying. And he pointed to a tree. And he said, that's soft, and that's where I'm staying tonight. I know it's cold, but I got a blanket, but I'm going to stay sober today, because if I go to the shelter, I'm going to use again. There's me telling him what to do. And he's like, no, I know what helps me stay well. He knew it. I didn't know it for him. And so many times when I think of me trying to tell someone what's best for them, oops. Uh-oh.
There you go.
How about it?
Yeah, there you go. We're back.
So the bottom line
there you go.
is listening to people, that what worked for me and what helps me in my recovery doesn't necessarily help other people. So that was my huge lesson. And Eddie, I owe Eddie for that today.
Love it. Jen?
Yeah, I love that. What I'm really curious about, because I feel like things that kind of where we're stuck is that society doesn't understand what it is for us be in recovery. We're up, or anybody to be in recovery for that matter. And we've got Oregon, and I don't know any other states that are legalizing drugs now so that we can get people help. Tell me what Georgia's doing right now to support legalization of drugs.
That's an interesting question. So I'm lucky enough to work at this agency where we have a full-time lobbyist, and y'all should have him on your show sometime. It's like a lot of my staff. He's an amazing guy, and he's a full-time lobbyist.
Yeah.
And one of the things, because Congress, as you know, the House passed the MORE Act, right? The legalization of marijuana act that never happened before. And so we looked at that and went, oh my gosh, we better be ready in Georgia because it's happening. It's coming, right? Big weed is kind of coming across the country. And so we are getting ready for it. We're developing a white paper right now, my staff and I, to, it's like, do we really need another powerfully reinforcing psychoactive substance that's legal for people? Do we really need that? And the big weed people will always say, well, look, it's better than alcohol. It's not as bad as alcohol. Well, alcohol killed 88,000 people last year. Why do we want to, is that our bar? No, we want to make sure that people are educated, right? So we have to take this public health approach, much like we did with seatbelts. Nobody wanted to wear seatbelts, 50 years ago. But when you start talking to people about the dangers of not wearing seatbelts, it's like the same thing, dangers of using alcohol and drugs, especially for developing brains. And that's a whole different conversation. So it's complicated, it's multi-layered. Georgia has very limited use of THC oil right now that's legal. And that was a big fight. So I think it's going to take us a while to get to quote legalization, but I think it's something we have to grapple with.
I know that information is very powerful indeed when it comes to addiction and alcoholism, because the more information we know is the more empowered we are. I mean, like you said, you go back to seatbelts, it's kind of the same thing, really, is people don't know what they don't know. And it's up to us as leaders in the community and the addiction recovery business to explain this stuff. Because I know there's a difference between a Friday night drunk and a Friday night alcoholic. One needs to sit in jail overnight. The other needs to go to treatment or help or hospital to get some help. And I'm really big on that. So my question, Neil, is marijuana a gateway drug?
Is it a drug? Is that the question?
Is it a gateway drug? A gateway drug?
I'm sorry. I think... gateway that's charged, right? Because that was sort of what that gives people something to push back. What I like to say is that marijuana is a powerfully reinforcing psychoactive substance, meaning the more you have, the more you want, right? So you want it. You have an experience with marijuana. Some people do. Some don't. Like pot was never my thing. It's not something that ever did anything for me. But for some people, it does, and they take it. They use it once, and they want it more, right? So it's reinforcing. And I think that's the way we have to explain it. It's a powerfully some people say, well, you can't get addicted to it. I know a lot of people who use marijuana every day, whether they're addicted to it, that's words, right? That's just a definition. So I think it's a powerfully reinforcing psychoactive substance that has an effect on the brain. And it's those consequences of that long-term use are not always good. That's all I know.
So I really want to get back to Eddie, because Eddie is a guy that we need on our side in service of educating the Senate, educating just humans out there, sharing about what addiction is. And one of the things that I feel like is that we don't have enough people in recovery in the White House or in our Senate or any of that, because nobody's talking about it. Because at one time, AA actually did have people in the Senate and they in Congress, and they were talking about it, and it got shut down. So how do we get more people talking about it in the higher level echelons, if you will, so that we can actually have an effective change in our country?
Yeah, we have to become a loud constituency. We can't be in back rooms. We can't just be ashamed of this. We have to lose that shame and to speak out and say, yes, I struggled. I got better. I may struggle again, but I'll get better again. We have to be the ones. Nobody is going to open that door for us. We have to bust open that door. We have to speak out. People have to be able to look at me and go, wow, that's a successful person. And look at that. I can do it. Eddie did it. I can do it. Rob did it. You did it. Jennifer did it. I mean, that's what happens. And it has to be multicultural too. It can't be just me. It has to be, I come from a very diverse state in Georgia, and what is keeps me well in my community may not work for someone in the Asian Pacific American community. It's a lot different. So I think we have to open the door and set that table for everyone. It's not just us, people who look like us, it's everyone, because, recovery exists in a cultural context, right? So when I got better and I went back to my home communities, no one welcomed me there. And I was again, middle class, white community for the most part. No one knew what was going on in my family. So we have to be able to help people recognize what, in every culture that this happens, and in every culture that we get better, and that how do we create these communities that are accepting of us. And I think we do that, Jennifer, by educating about the science of addiction. This is something that happens in our brains. It's not a moral weakness. It's not a sin, as we say in Georgia. It's something that happens in our brains, and that we get better. And I don't think Atlanta has one of the busiest airports in the world, and you don't see cameras out there watching the safe landings, right? No one cares. They only care when there's a crash. And so when we see a celebrity crash, it's like, oh, everybody's focused on that. But no one wants to see us, the safe landings. No one wants to talk about us. I'm boring. My life is boring, pretty much. So I think we have to keep talking, and we have to vote in, hold our leaders accountable, and vote in those people that understand recovery, that are willing to be an ally for recovery, and hopefully start voting for people who are in recovery. The Office of National Drug Control Policy in the Obama administration had a person in recovery who was running that, which is awesome. It's like, that's how it should be. There shouldn't be anything about us without us, right? We should be at every table. That's how I started this. So we should be talking. We should be a constituency that matters. When we should be able, how you get these surveys to elected officials that say, where do you stand on electricity rates? We should have that. Where do you stand on recovery, on access to recovery? Yeah. Where do you stand on funding? Yeah. Where do you stand on that? Make them accountable to us, because we vote them in. And I know that's easier said than done, but we are creating leaders on the ground. We have peer-led recovery community organizations. We have 36 of them now in Georgia. We're a statewide recovery community organization. We are speaking out. We're getting ready to have our Addiction Recovery Awareness Day at the state capitol, which is going to be virtual this year. But last year at the state capitol, 1,300 people show up. We had our governor, we had our state attorney general, we had a ton of elected officials. We have a recovery caucus now. It's not a caucus, it's a working group. There's a difference. It's a working group in recovery, where we have state legislators that signed on. It's bipartisan, bicameral. We go to those folks when we want legislation, or now they're starting. This is the beauty of it. They're starting to come to us when they hear about legislation. They're like, hey, what does the council think about that? What does the recovery community think about that? That's how it should be.
Exactly. I love that. Guys, we'll be right back after this. Hey guys, that was Living Recovery Interventions. Recovery begins today. Recovery begins together. The gift of recovery. Travis is a friend of ours, absolutely amazing guy. If a loved one is in trouble, call Travis 801-573-4188, or you can visit his website, liveandrecoveryinterventions.com. Remember, guys, recovery begins today. Recovery begins together. 801-573-4188. Such an amazing guy. I think, Neil, that recovery is contagious. So I think I never tell anybody when my sober birthday is. I just don't. I always say you should be able to tell by talking to me, by looking in my eyes, by seeing what I do, my actions, just by my actions, not by my intentions today, which is beautiful. And I think going forward, that's what it's about, because I think, my alcoholism is not a problem anymore. My behavior is, my selfishness is, and we read the same book, Neil. It's like selfishness kills us, not the alcohol. By the time I get to picking up the alcohol, it's way too late. What happened a week ago? Where did your behavior change? Where did you get selfish? Mm-hmm. This is the questions for the alcoholic itself that we need to be asking. It's all about behavior. It's all about changing neural pathways. It's all about giving back to the community, as you do, Neil. And what's the future hold for you regarding what you're doing today? Where do you want to take this?
So I want to retire. Eventually I have three grandsons that I love so much, and so eventually, you know how it is. It's like, this work is so intense, but it also feeds me. And like you, Dr. Rob, it's an avocation, right? This is not a vocation. It's not a job and I go home at 5 o'clock. This is an avocation, and I'm going to keep doing it. But I think, so for me, personally, I feel a huge responsibility to help create other recovery leaders around the state, a diverse group of people who are in recovery, who have voices, who are, wanting to make changes in their communities. I think grassroots is everything. So I do my best to try to give voice to other emerging leaders and young people. Man, young people they're so bright and they're so energetic, and I don't think any social movement is going to go anywhere without young people. So I think we have to keep engaging these young people into what's going on in their communities. They have to take it back. We're losing too many of them. So I think for us at the council, we do peer recovery support services. We do coaching. We're in hospitals. We're in 3 emergency rooms and 2 neonatal intensive care units in Georgia. We want to see that expanded. We want to see our recovery community organizations everywhere. So people, if they're in trouble, they don't have to necessarily get a diagnosis to go somewhere. They can just walk in. They don't have to, get arrested to get help. They can just walk into a center and get loving, because that's what worked for me. Is having that connection, being accountable to someone as well. So I think, the future's bright. I think we need to, I'm terrified at the thought of this pandemic coming to an end. The effect it's had on our community, I think, is going to be felt for years. I think that we don't know. I'm really afraid for students and how they're getting along in this pandemic without that connection that's so important to them. So I think we've got a lot of work to do. In Georgia, we have seen a record number of overdoses this last year since the pandemic. So we call it the epidemic within the pandemic, and we're trying so hard to stay connected with our peers and the folks that are still struggling out there. Because I think once this is all over, and I'm hoping it is someday, because I really want to go to a restaurant, but I really want to hug people. It's like I miss hugging, I miss that touch, I miss that connection. So we're just trying to stay tight. We offer a virtual all recovery meeting twice a day. And you can go to our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. You can see twice a day, 2 times a day. We have as many 40 and 50 people in the evening on some of our virtual all recovery meetings. So our goal is just to keep connected, stay connected with these folks, let them know that they're not alone. We run a recovery support warm line where you can call from 8:30 in the morning until 11 at night and talk to a recovery coach. We don't push, we don't pull, we just walk alongside people. If you just want to call and say, man, I'm lonely, I need to hear a voice, or whether you're a family member or someone who's seeking recovery, give us a call. And we can put that number in. It's 844-326-5400. And you can talk to someone like me, and they are enthusiastic. Our coaches are amazing, and it's just something we started 3 years ago, and it's been a huge success. So we've got our we've got a lot of stuff going on, but I'm really afraid of what's going to happen as this pandemic keeps rolling on.
Yeah, we are too. Talk to me about how you guys have been dealing with treatments, treatment centers in the midst of this pandemic. Because we can't be together.
Yeah.
Are you able to send people to treatment at this point, or are you doing it all virtually?
No. So there were for a while, for several months, treatment was closed. I believe they started taking people. There's some protocols that they have. I'm not sure if they're requiring a negative test. I really, we don't know, but I know our recovery community organization stopped for a while, but you can they're open again. They practice social distancing, but a lot of our work these days is being done virtually. And it's not bad, right? So I don't know about you. I went to my first virtual 12-step meeting during this pandemic. I had never been to a virtual one before, and it was pretty cool. So I do that, plug into that every now and then. But we do our recovery meetings every day. And we have an LGBTQ meeting on Thursdays at noon. And we have a Spanish-speaking meeting on Tuesdays. So we're just trying to, again, set that table really big, culturally, diversely, and let everybody know that for us, recovery is the expectation. When you come to us for help, we expect you to recover. There's just no other two ways about it. I always say the recovery in me can see the recovery in you. You can't see it yet. I can see it. Yeah. So we're always trying to give that hope. We call ourselves hope dealers. So
yeah, it's all about inspiring people. I think if it wasn't through Zoom. By the way, guys, as far as I know, Zoom is the only HIPAA compliant software out there right now. So it's great for AA meetings. It's great for medical stuff. But without the Zoom meetings, I think a lot of people would have relapsed, and a lot of people would have died. So it's awesome. I just love. I have a meeting during the day. I go in 2 or 3 times a day between patients, and it's just absolutely awesome. Unfortunately, guys, we're coming to the end of the show. Another guest that we wish we had a lot more time for because there's so much information. So a couple of things I want to say, Neil, before you go. First of all, the 60 things just threw me for a loop. I don't believe that whatsoever. I'm sure you're fibbing to us. I want to really acknowledge you.
I can show you my license.
Oh, there you go. There's the proof. I want to acknowledge you for who you are. I want to acknowledge you for the work that you do, not only with the council, but with work in the addiction world itself, outside that, the 12-step work, which I'm sure you do, and the sponsees. And you're just such an amazing person. So glad that we got you on the show today. Very informational, very inspiring. I don't get inspired by a lot of people. Very inspiring. And thank you so much for what you do. It was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a privilege to work in this space, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, Neil, I really want to thank you I loved your story. I love that you're willing to still share where you were 30 years ago and how recovery has affected your life. You are a miracle walking with the story that you have. And thank you so much for all that you are doing in the world of recovery. It means so much to me, my kids, excuse me, and everyone that I work with. So thank you so, so much. It was lovely meeting you.
My pleasure. Thank you all for what you do. We'll support, anytime you want anything, let us know. We've got an amazing, diverse staff full of people who are as enthusiastic, if not more, than I am. So thank you.
Excellent. There's anything myself and Jen can do, of course, moving forward. You know where we are.
Yeah.
Our people will get in touch with your people or vice versa. Guys, Neil Campbell was on the show, and absolutely an amazing person. Stick around, guys. We'll finish the show just after this. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I hope you caught that. It was an amazing show. Neil Campbell from the Georgia Council for Substance Abuse was on. Just a great 45 minutes we spent with her. What do you reckon, Jen?
Oh my God, I loved her.
Yeah, me too. Very good. Very
She's amazing.
Useful, very adamant. Yeah, definitely.
She's on fire for the recovery community, and I really love that.
Yeah, definitely. We need more people like that, without a doubt. I want to apologize for the lags. I mean, I was echoing, Jen was lagging. Of course, Neil was off a few times, so I know it affected the viewers coming on. But stick with us, guys. Sometimes it's happened. It's all down to the weather. And hey, listen, guys, you want something for free? I know, I said it free. Not many things in the world free. Got two things great free for you today, guys. Daddy, Daddy, Please Stop Drinking and the Addiction Diaries. If you want a copy of them signed, send either emails or messages on Facebook to myself or Jennifer, and we'll send that out free of charge to you, just so you can. The only thing we'll require if we send it out free of charge, and we'll pay for postage, is that you pass it on to somebody else when you finish, and get as many people as you can. Great show, guys. Great being with you. I want to thank you for joining the show. We'll see you on Friday with a brand new guest. So for me, it's bye-bye for now.
Bye, guys.